What's up, folks? What's going on over there? What's going on? What's going on? It's KP's Video News, y'all. And you know, sometimes things just don't go the way you expect them to.
You know what time it is? It's time for KP's Video News.
But you always know. It's time for KP's Video News.
KP's Video News, y'all.
You're going to get it hit with the real. You're going to get the raw.
KP's Video News, y'all.
That's right.
KP's Video News, y'all.
Gonna get hit with the real. Gonna get hit with the raw.
Right.
It's the news, baby.
KP's Video News, y'all.
That's right. KP's Video News, y'all. I'm coming to you with some stories, man, that you ain't gonna believe, Jack. You are not gonna believe. I mean, it's a new report that just came out, and it states that the reason why FEMA denies aid to Southern black families, and it states this is the reason why they say the lack of wills and deeds to prove land ownership is blocking thousands of Southern black families from qualifying for FEMA disaster aid. And following deadly tornadoes that ripped through Alabama, FEMA sent a representative to a rural disaster zone to find out why more people weren't applying for grants worth up to $72,000. And the FEMA representative discovered the long-held tradition of informal land ownership is blocking families in need from getting aid. And Jim Crow laws black people from participating in the legal system to obtain documents like wills and deeds, thus creating informal inheritance practices known as heirs properties. This type of land ownership, the Department of Agriculture said, is the leading cause of black involuntary land loss. The Post reported, without formal documents proving land ownership, many black families can't apply for federal loans and grants, including FEMA disaster aid, which requires applicants to prove they own their property before grant funds can be awarded. An analysis by the stated that the number of applicants that they get rejected by the majority of black counties is twice as high as the national rejection average of 2%. In some parts of the Deep South, FEMA has rejected up to 25% of applicants because they cannot prove that they own the land. Black farmers have similarly been cut out of lending programs and aid because of their heir property ownership. FEMA has been dealing with this dilemma since 2005, when an estimated 20,000 heirs property owners were denied disaster aid in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. 2017, Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico. FEMA faced the issues again, denying over 80,000 applicants because of their land title issues. And so there's no legal basis to support requiring disaster survivors to provide that prove that they own the land or the homes, but FEMA created the rule to prevent scammers from receiving the aid. The agency created a pathway for landowners in Puerto Rico to self-certify home ownership in 2018, but the program hasn't extended to black families living in the South. So Joe Biden instructed FEMA to prioritize areas that are often often overlooked in getting disaster aid. But the way the rules are written right now, many of the families living in these areas where climate change is already disproportionately having an impact won't get the help they need because of the racism of America's past. So you got people that live down south, and they acquired property because they were the heir, the next heir, and that person died, and they left that property. You have to have some type of deed and title ownership in order for you to prove that that property is yours if you want to get some assistance from the federal government and assistance from FEMA. So do what you can to try to get that paperwork, man. You got to get that paperwork. You got to have it. Gotta have it. So I'm gonna go ahead on and switch over to this next one, this next story about Julie over there. It said, old Julie, Rudy Giuliani, was so drunk on election night that Trump aides worried he smashed valuable White House china. And this is a story by Michael Wolff. And Rudy G was so drunk, man. It said Rudy Giuliani was always drunk, and the Trump had concerns about his drinking. Wolf claims in his new book. Rudy said Wolf described how the night of November 3rd, 2020, the former New York City mayor was struggling to maintain his balance while trying to convince others that Trump had won re-election. At one point, he was pulled aside in the White House China Room by several aides of the former president, and at that moment, Rudy Giuliani was so incredibly drunk, weaving this way and that way, Wolf stated. And in China, those place settings from every president are very valuable in that room. So you got place settings from every presidency that had been saved, like in this particular room, in the China room. And it's like, okay, all the way, I guess, going all the way back to George Washington. And Trump's aide was obviously or rightfully concerned about what Giuliani was saying to the president about the election and giving him this misinformation. Wolf continued, but they were also concerned that he was going to break to China. Wolf then elaborated that Giuliani was really, really drunk, and said he was always buzzed and hopelessly in the middle of in the mumble tank. And Trump once said in the days following the 2020 election that Giuliani drank too much and often said things that weren't true. Oh, wow. So, old Julie is an alkie, y'all. Julie got an alkie problem. He got an alkie problem. So, hey, man, it's crazy stuff going on in there. So we got Baltimore. I'm going to come back to that. Well, I'll do this story first. And this Baltimore police officer and a sergeant have been criminally charged in an incident which the officer allegedly assaulted a teenager and threatened to choke and kill him during an arrest. A 17-year-old who was wanted in connection with a stolen vehicle was slammed to the ground by Officer Maxwell Dundor, who then wrapped his left arm around the teen and threatened to choke him to death as the officer tried to handcuff the teen. According to indictments charging Dundor and his supervisor, Brendan O'Leary, both were indicted by the grand jury on Thursday. And he said, swear I'll choke you out if you don't stop, Dundor said, as the other police officer who arrived at the scene attempted to secure the teen's legs, according to the prosecutors. Dundor is charged with second-degree assault and misconduct in office and faces up to 10 years in prison. O'Leary, who was responsible for completing a use of force report from the incident, was indicted on charges of making false statement and misconduct in office after prosecutors said there were discrepancies in the report. The report submitted by Sergeant O'Leary minimized the severity of Officer Dundor's actions, materially distorted the nature of the incident to justify unlawful police conduct, and mislead investigators into concluding that the actions of the Officer Dundor were within Baltimore Police Department policy. Neither officer had an attorney listed in online court records. The Baltimore Police said in a statement yesterday that the department's Public Integrity Bureau opened an internal investigation into the April 2020 incident and immediately referred this incident to the state's attorney's office. Here we are a year later. But both officers have been suspended with pay and assigned administrative work pending the outcome of the investigation. And these indictments demonstrate our commitment to ensuring one standard of justice for all, regardless of one's race, sex, religion, and occupation. Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said in a statement, administrators of the criminal justice system, we are committed to protecting public safety as well as the well-being of everyone in our community. The incident occurred around 9 a.m. on April 27, 2020, after Dundor, a uniformed officer, was called to the 2800 block of Mayfield in the Bel Air Edison neighborhood to investigate a report of a stolen automobile. Dundor found the 17-year-old exiting the driver's side of a reported stolen automobile, and then the teen allegedly attempted to flee on foot, prosecutors stated. After chasing the teen, the prosecutor said the officer threw the teen face down on the concrete, and the officer attempted to restrain the teen under his neck. As Dundor held the teen's throat, prosecutors said the teen struggled for air. Dundor then stated, "I'll choke you, I'll kill you," before releasing his hands, according to prosecutors. After another officer responded to the scene, the teen had been handcuffed. Prosecutors said Dundor then pushed the teen on the right side of his face. Dundor then stood up, stepped over the teen, and then back kicked him in the face. Wow. When the teen complained that Dundor kicked him, prosecutors said Dundor told him to shut up, and at one point called him a stupid ass. While at the scene, the officer told another officer, "I did slam him." Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott said in a statement that he was disgusted by the allegations and is committed to improving this culture and the lack of humanity. Scott said that he would continue to advocate for Maryland General Assembly to change laws that allow local authorities to immediately terminate officers, change the laws to allow local authorities to immediately terminate officers for clearly egregious conduct. And Baltimore Police Commissioner Harris stated last year that the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights prohibited him from quickly firing officers accused of clear wrongdoing, which chiefs in other states have the authority to do. Shortly after the death of George Floyd by police in Minneapolis in 2020, Harrison said he would not be permitted to fire officers involved as the Minneapolis chief was able to do. So they need to change that rule and that regulation. So let's see. But the General Assembly passed sweeping police reforms this year, but none of those new measures would permit an officer to be terminated before a conviction for similar charges. Changes of the law allow chiefs to fire officers convicted of a felony or certain misdemeanors, but do not require agencies complete administrative investigations. So they basically right back where they were. So then here we go with another crazy case. Drop the gun. Cop mistakes a phone for a gun in a fatal shooting. Here we go again, y'all. Another fatal shooting. And wow. So Deputy David Turberfield, who shot Isaiah Brown 8 times in Virginia's Spotsylvania County in April, was indicted with felony recklessly handling of a firearm in a grand jury on July 15th, and his sentence involves a maximum of 5 years in prison. Body camera footage of the part of the incident was released by Spotsylvania Police Department in April, and according to another video released by Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office, Turberfield and other deputies responded to a report of domestic disturbance at 3:19 on April 21st. In response to the shooting, Turberfield was placed on administrative leave, which is still in effect. According to the audio of the 911 call between Brown and the dispatcher, Brown told the dispatcher he was going to hurt his brother. However, Brown was unarmed at the time he was shot. He was only holding a phone that he used to talk to the 911 dispatcher. When the police arrived at the scene, I told you guys before, don't call 911. Anyway, back to the story. When the police arrived on the scene, an officer is heard shouting, "Drop the gun." After shooting Brown, the officer continues to say, "Drop the gun." The shooting resulted in significant injuries to Mr. Brown. Brown's attorney stated that that we are calling for the immediate termination of Deputy David Turberfield, and the statement continues. Haynes also stated that the Brown family feels that a maximum of 5 years does not seem like enough, given that this was totally unjustified shooting. And so they got charges brought up against him. He's been indicted, and they have brought charges up on him with the felony of reckless handling of a firearm, killed a man, killed another black man holding the phone, and this happened back in April. Wow. So here we go with another crazy situation. We got a Wisconsin judge that is suspended for a paltry 7 days after pulling out his gun during a sentencing hearing and in front of high school students. So a county judge in Wisconsin was suspended by the state's highest court for impatient, undignified, and disrespectful speech during the court proceedings in which he showed his pistol to victims of violence during a sentencing hearing and high school students during an event. So Winnebago Circuit Judge Scott C. Wolt was given a 7-day suspension without pay in light of his behavior in per curiam opinion by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. 2 judges separately concurred and dissented in part, and 2 other judges did not participate. Having considered all the facts of the proceeding, including all the appropriate aggravating and mitigating factors, we conclude that a short suspension is necessary in this situation to assure the members of the public that judges will treat them with dignity, fairness, and respect when they enter the courtroom of this state, and to impress upon Judge Wolt the seriousness of his misconduct and the need for him to change how he treats jurors, lawyers, litigants, witnesses, victims, and staff with whom he interacts. The court concluded, noting that Wolt's lengthy record on the bench does not contain any previous misconduct allegations, and that the judge infractions are over 5 years old. So he has some other infractions. So in June 2015, a cognitively impaired defendant pleaded guilty to a stalking charge in exchange for a burglary charge being dismissed during the sentencing hearing. One of the victims spoke about how the defendant's behavior had undermined the family's sense of safety, and Wolt sympathized with a rather lengthy thing, and then he drew out his gun. He drew out his guns, and in the middle of it all, and he said, "I keep my gun with me," and he threatened the suspect. He said, "You would be dead, plain and simple, if you had came into my house trying to burglarize my house." So therefore, he just got booted off of his bench for a week. You know, come on, man. This is something where they should have just said, you know what, you pulling guns, it's illegal. I mean, you got in some courts, you have bailiffs that don't even have guns. You got metal detectors. You got to take everything out your pocket, so you can't even bring a fingernail file into a courthouse. But the judge is sitting behind the bench with a gun, and he decides that it was his bright idea to pull his gun out, threaten the suspect, talking about if he had came to his house, what he would have done to him. So therefore, that week suspension, 7-day suspension, is a bunch of garbage. That's a bunch of garbage right there, man. It's like, hey, what are you gonna do, folks? What are you gonna do? You know, it's this is where we live. This is where we live at today. Again, this is KP's Video News. KP Video News, y'all.
It's time for what?
KP Video News, y'all.
KP Video News, y'all.